All right, welcome everybody. I am Mark Ainley from GC Realty Development and Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm here today with Steve Shaw. Steve is a landlord that has properties in District 10, 13, and 14 in Cook County, in both the city of Chicago and the suburbs, where this proposed ordinance is going to potentially affect housing providers like Steve. So, Steve, give us a little background of you've been in this for a long time. Give us a little background on your path.
Sure. I've been doing this for about 17 years on and off. 2003 to 2006, I bought some small buildings, 6 unit, 7 unit, in Skokie and East Riders Park. And then I stepped away because I saw the housing market change, and I went back to doing what I knew before that. And then I lost my parents in 2013 and 14, and I inherited some property from them in West Riders Park, or West Ridge, as it's more commonly known. Okay. And, my parents have always been working while managing their properties, and so I took over, and I've been learning.
Nice. So this proposed ordinance, it's going to affect people just like you. I think some of the thoughts when this is proposed is the big bad landlord, or the big huge East Coast Wall Street backed REITs or West Coast REITs that they're going to put some control in effect for them. When in all reality, it's landlords such as yourself that own buildings, 5 to 6 units in a building and multiple buildings, and you're doing it as a side. I don't like use hustle as a bad word, but it's a negative word, but as a kind of a way to expand, called the American dream, I guess, of creating your own destiny. So, that being said, what's something in this new proposed ordinance that kind of hits home with you as far as how it's going to affect your operation or your ability to manage the way you've been managing?
Especially in the suburbs, if something similar to the Chicago, the RTLO, this new proposed RTLO, just the mandatory penalties. I think many tenants are really onto it, that are really trying to, not work with you. As a small housing provider, I always try to work things out with people. I have a personal relationship with my residents, tenants, and but there are some that you really have to, be careful of, because they understand what mistakes I may have made in the leasing process, and that can really affect me. It can become very expensive, and it'll raise my costs.
Yeah, no. So as an unintended effect of raising your costs, how would that affect your operation going forward, in the sense of what you'll have to do with not being flexible on late fees, or when it comes time to raising rent? Like, how's that going to affect you ultimately in how you operate?
As a smaller housing provider, usually we end up absorbing that kind of risk. But I've learned over the last 7 years that every time I do that, I just harm myself and my family. And none of the tenants ever appreciated all the things that I absorb. I think I will have to raise rents, to compensate for that increased risk. And each suburb has their own set of, requirements. It differs, and it's already complicated. And this just makes it so complicated for a small landlord like me to keep up with these requirements. I don't know how anybody can get it right.
Yeah. As a property manager myself, it's tough to navigate all the waters of the different municipalities or the Chicago ordinance. And, at least with Chicago, there's not the rental license in place, and in some of the suburbs that you have the rental license deal, but you don't have the Chicago ordinance in place. And now here you're taking certain, probably about 40 or 50 at least municipalities in Cook County that have both the rental license laws that we'll have to follow and oblige by, and now this ordinance. So it's definitely going to, you think this will hamper kind of people's decision whether to invest in Cook County or not?
Oh, absolutely. I think people have been questioning that for a long time. When you look at property values in suburban Cook County, there's hardly any municipality where property values have really gone up in the past 17 years, or not substantially for investment property. In Chicago, they have a different set of dynamics. So it's...
How do you think this will affect the affordable housing push that usually our elected officials are trying to always make room for affordable housing and be able to keep a certain segment of the rental market affordable for renters? How do you think this new proposed ordinance would affect that?
I think it's going to work against that dramatically. People are just going to have to raise rents here. Just so much more complexity. And if you get penalized, let's say you have to, you are in an eviction with even one person every couple of years, that still could be $5,000, $7,000, $10,000. That has to come from somewhere. Yep.
No, the risk has to be offset. Ask any insurance company, right?
Yeah. That's right.
So, you're a very responsible housing provider. I know personally that you work well with your tenants, especially in the last year during all these COVID ups and downs. Now, working closely with your tenant base, having that flexibility to work with them without the fear of some of these call it backhanded things they can come back and do. How do you think that will change going forward if something like this passes in the with the the mandatory type sentencing for some of these minor infractions? How do you think that's going to affect your ability to we use the neighbors renting to neighbors type mentality? How do you think that will affect you in your relationships with your tenants?
I think with my current tenants, it will make it a little bit more strained when there's discussions of how do we work out a plan. I mean, we always work out a plan with our tenants, but with new tenants, the requirements just have to be so much higher. And it's like, if you have a difficult time trying to, take a chance on people, who's going to take a chance on people? That's the unintended consequence of this RLTO.
Yes, you bring a very valid point there. When it comes to leasing your place, there's still many opportunities where housing providers such as you or me, we can give a chance or a second chance, or someone that just came off of a rough bounce. Just think about people that are coming out from challenges this year in 2020, and they go to rent a place next year. They might have taken some bruises to their credit or their income. Oh, sure. And now coming out the other side, someone like yourself or many of housing providers like yourself, they're going to be nervous because now they have the winds at their back, I guess, when it comes to what they have to do if they can't pay. So I think that did that summarize kind of what you were trying to say there?
Yeah, it's cheaper to leave your apartment empty than to have to force somebody out later. You can't afford to take a risk when they make it so difficult to deal with renters that are disruptive to other people, or just can't afford to pay for a long time.
What is something in suburban Skokie that you might do now to be more flexible with one of your tenants than possibly you do within Chicago? Is there any other flexibilities you offer just because you're already following the rental license laws there, but is there anything that you're able to accommodate as a housing provider there that you might not under the restrictions of the CRLTO?
I think I am more lenient when I rent, in Skokie, because they have a crime-free addendum. And but in practice, I had a situation last year it was actually early this year, luckily, where a person was 17, he was the son, he moved in, and he had a long rap sheet. He ended up with 2 ankle monitors on his leg, and he was dealing drugs from the backyard in the alley. So I worked with the Skokie police. It was very rough on the tenants because they were being threatened. and some of the neighbors were being threatened, and there was nothing I could really do about it. And luckily, I worked it out with the mother where they ended up moving.
Nice.
So the formal process, it would have taken a long time, and especially with COVID, there's not, who knows how long it would take.
Yeah, and now in that similar situation, possibly a year from now, if something like this passes, the 10-day notice, you'll now have to, if that gets expanded to 30 days, which I think is a very important thing. We can talk about that here in a second. But that would be something that would affect how you would handle that situation. And then at the same time, the rights that that tenant might have to come back at you for minor imperfections could affect you as well. So,
yes.
One final question along those lines: the provision of being able to hand out a 10-day notice to cure. I mean, how important is that to keep at that 10 days versus where they're talking about expanding it to 30?
I think it's very important because it's more from your other residents' safety perspective. If you're a resident and there's somebody dangerous that's living there doing something that's very disruptive, the good people tend to move out. And then you have high vacancy, and some smaller landlords who are more desperate will just rent to anybody just to keep some money flowing in. And they just create an even worse situation.
Yeah, so you might end up with building of lackluster tenants versus, and then possibility of your housing conditions slipping even as well too. So, and that could be a domino effect.
Yes.
Well, Steve, I appreciate your time here today. Is there anything else you want to say in regards to anything else you might have regarding any of the points around it, or any way that you think people could be helping right now to keep the discussion flowing on this topic?
I don't know if it's quite related to this new ordinance, but how it works in Chicago with the RTLO, it's so difficult. I had one tenant recently who brought in a roommate. He said, "Oh, this person's good," and I didn't get a chance to check his background. But the other person ended up being undocumented, and he ended up texting me saying, "Hey, I can stay here without paying for a long time. I know it." And he was right. There was not much I could do. So these kind of ordinances, they're protecting residents, but they seem to be only protecting the ones that are trying to game the system. Most landlords I know are pretty fair with their tenants, and the more smaller housing providers there are will maintain relationships with tenants.
I agree. I follow in life the 80-20 rule, which I think in here would be the 95-5 rule, where you got 5% bad tenants and 5% bad landlords. That this might take an effect on one way or another, but it's the other 95 here in the scenario that it's going to have unknown long-term consequences for both sides. So, Steve, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate you always supporting the local causes, and you have a good one.
Okay, you too. Thank you.